All right, welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the company and your lunch. I love hearing, seeing, getting a little ear in on the different tables, all the wonderful fellowship and energy in the room. And now, before we get to our wonderful speakers, I want to take a moment to tell you why I am especially excited to be with you today for the Chicago Network's Women in the Forefront Luncheon. I mentioned earlier that I'm representing CBS Chicago, and when we come out, we do it in full force. So I am thankful to be surrounded every day by strong leaders. I want to start with our president and general manager, Jen Lyons, because she's been running Chicago. But not only that, they decided they needed her in Detroit too. So now she is the president and general manager for Chicago CBS, Detroit CBS. What are they going to add next, Jen? In addition, we have our community impact executive producer, Sandy, our morning anchor, Dana, morning anchor, Audrina, managing editor, Beth, executive producer, Rebecca and Sue. And the reason that you might actually be on our news tonight is because we brought Lana, our photojournalist, at the back of the room. And during lunch, I got some great advice from a different Lana, another one that you're going to hear from today, about why it's so important to be surrounded by strong women. I'm striving to do that with my daughter, and she had some great advice, so thank you for that. And now I'm thrilled to introduce our two remarkable women leaders you're going to hear from. It is my pleasure to welcome to the stage Dr. Suzette McKinney, the Chicago Network's board chair, and the Chicago Network president and CEO, Maria Dowdy. Let's start with that.
I came up before the music. I should have waited. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 36th Annual Women in the Forefront Luncheon celebration. As Erica said, I am Suzette McKinney, and I'm the board chair of the Chicago Network. So first, please join me in helping me to thank CBS 2 News Chicago's Erica Sargent for graciously serving as our MC once again. We are always so delighted to have her with us. And we are thrilled that you are here with us as we recognize and celebrate the Chicago Network's achievements in empowering women to lead. And what a year it has been. It has been my honor and privilege to serve as the chair of the board this past year and to include advancing women on corporate and public company boards as my platform. The Chicago Network's Women on Boards Committee has done a phenomenal job developing programming to assist TCN members in building their board readiness credentials and positioning themselves for success when board opportunities arise. I would like to thank Sarah Greenstein and the entire Women on Boards Committee for their tireless work, and I'm so excited to continue in service to the Women on Boards efforts, although my chairmanship is ending. Women on Boards hasn't been the only accomplishment this year. I have been elated to watch the force that is Maria Dowdy as CEO of the Chicago Network. Under her leadership, TCN has executed a digital transformation plan, advanced the promotion of TCN's equity principles. Programming continues to advance TCN's mission of empowering executive women across the Chicagoland area. And TCN's reach and profile has now expanded beyond Chicago. Maria, thank you for your phenomenal leadership and your partnership. It is just so wonderful to be here in this room with you all today in person, as well as those of you that are joining us virtually. Thank you so much for being here. And I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to recognize our sponsors who have made today's event possible. And we are grateful for the commitment that they have to equity and the network well beyond today's event. So first, thanks to our premier sponsors, Discover Financial Services, McDonald's Corporation, and State Street Global Advisors. And a big thank you to our 10 platinum sponsors: Abbott, Aon, Bimbo QRS, CDW, Elevance Health, Granger, the Hyatt Hotels Corporation, Kirkland and Ellis, KPMG, the Northridge Group, and finally, thanks to all our gold, silver, and copper sponsors. We are deeply grateful for your investment in empowering women to lead and helping us realize our vision of gender equity for women of all colors at all levels everywhere. We have a wonderful program lined up for you today. 2 incredible groundbreaking female leaders, Tricia Griffith and Lana Zach. We want to make the program interactive, so there will be a Q&A towards the end of the fireside chat. So start to think about those questions, ladies. And now, it gives me great pleasure to turn the microphone over to our Chicago Network President and CEO, Maria Dowdy.
Thank you, Suzette. She has been an extraordinary board chair, and it's been just a privilege to work with her. So thank you, Suzette, for your leadership in really making this year just an extraordinary success. Now, it's my privilege to acknowledge the Women in the Forefront co-chairs, Francesca DiBiase and Julie Scott, as well as our dedicated and extraordinary Women in the Forefront Luncheon Committee, Paulita Pike, Jill Smart, Joyce St. Clair, Mary Lee Schneider, Karen Teitelbaum, Yasmin Winkler, and Kathleen Yasko. Will you all please stand? Thank you for all the hard work in filling this incredible ballroom. It is truly a spectacular sight. I wish I could flip the room so you could see what I see. We are nearly breaking fire codes here. And now will the Chicago Network's Board of Directors please stand and be recognized. Thank you for your leadership and support. I could not do this without you. I also want to give a special thanks to the small but mighty Chicago Network staff, Laura Jaffe, Ellen Feinberg, and Nathan Upchurch, who worked tirelessly to make everything today perfect. Thanks to our event partners, as well as our media partners, CBS, for their AV and media support. And finally, a very big thanks to Joan Vittorini, Hyatt Corporation's Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, and Chicago Network member, by the way, and the entire Hyatt staff, the staff here that's here supporting us, as well as the hospitality and service staff. Thank you for your gracious hospitality and service. Over the last 36 years, it's been said that if we could bottle the energy in this room, we could transform the globe. And as I stand here before you today, it couldn't be truer. So thank you for all that you do in your lives to empower women to lead. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to our wonderful MC. But remember, don't forget to use that hashtag WILF 2020. And we're so grateful that you're here to join us. So thank you so much and enjoy the conversation.
Well, thank you to Suzette and Maria. Now, are you ready for the main event? Ladies, the few gentlemen in the room, are you ready? It is my privilege to introduce today's speaker, President and CEO of Progressive Group of Insurance Companies, Tricia Griffith. She joined the company in 1988 as an entry-level claims representative after graduating from Illinois State University. Yes, she is an Illinois native. Since her first day at Progressive, Tricia has helped it become the top choice for auto, home, and other insurance, leading the company to historic growth. Additionally, she has been a champion for women in the company and in the insurance and financial service industries. Trisha was named the first woman to be named Fortune magazine's Business Person of the Year, and was named to Barron's 2020 Top 25 CEOs. Trisha has been named among Fortune's most powerful women in business for the last 6 years. For the last 4, she has been named one of Forbes' world's 100 most powerful women. And our esteemed moderator, Lana Zak. Lana is an anchor for the CBS News 24/7, CBS News Premier 24/7 anchored live streaming news, and a CBS national correspondent. She is a multiple Emmy, Edward R. Murrow Peabody, Front Page, and Alfred I. DuPont Columbia University awarded journalist. At CBS, Lana has anchored major breaking news stories, including the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the results of the 2020 election. Lana joined CBS News from ABC News, smart choice, Lana, where she was a member of the White House press corps. During the 2016 presidential campaign, she reported from every battleground state leading up to the election. She actually started her career as an anchor producer for Diane Sawyer, who, by the way, is a former Women in the Forefront Luncheon speaker, rising to the position of coordinating producer for ABC News Special Units. A Fulbright and Truman Scholar, Lana holds a master's degree in public policy with a concentration in international security and political economy from Harvard University. Just this morning, she was named to Hollywood Reporter's list of most trusted news anchors in America, and Lana humbly said, it's a long list, but we know you are so deserving. So please join me in welcoming these exceptional women to the stage, Trisha and Lana.
Hello, everyone. It is so wonderful to be with you. I also want to say especially a hello to my mother and my sister who are in the audience today. Trisha and I were talking about the importance of women lifting up other women and our parents' roles in our lives, and we'll get into all of that, but I just wanted to say thank you, especially to my mom. And to all the women who lift up other women, and to the men who are in our audience doing the same. Appreciate all of you.
All right, then I'm going to shout out to table 126. My son-in-law, Sean
Yes.
Oxley, is in the room.
Much of our conversation today is actually going to be devoted to family and how we as women leaders are able to manage that. A lot of us in this room are dealing with children. We're dealing with, in some cases, adult children, grandchildren. We're also, in some cases, dealing with our parents as they're aging and trying to make sure that we are providing the love that they shared with us to them as well. So, so many people today have already started talking to you about Progressive's commercials. The most recent one that I saw included the Progressive team. You said it was the squad. The squad, hanging out, trying to figure out who the boss is. Is the boss woman Flo? The boss woman is Trisha. And when it comes to boss women, she cannot be beat. On the Fortune 500 list, there are 50, I think between 52 and 54 women that are on the list of Fortune 500 CEOs. Trisha is premier among all those women and has devoted much of her career to trying to elevate other women and all of that. So I want to say we could not have a better person to learn from, and we're going to learn about setbacks, leaps forward, and all of those spinning plates that we try and keep in the air with Trisha. Perfect. So, Trisha, first of all, let's just start off by talking about, you started at the bottom, and you shared a very personal story about one of the lowest moments in your life, when you didn't think that you were even going to stay in school. Can you share with our audience and be vulnerable with us in that way?
Of course, yeah. We cried on the phone yesterday. Yeah, so I went to Illinois State University, and I'm the youngest of 6. I'm from the central Illinois area, the South Peru, and I followed my siblings there. And my junior year, I'd finally gotten out of the dorms, and I'm out in the apartments, so I'm a real live adult. And unexpectedly, my dad died. And my mom was a waitress and then ended up working in the mall, and my dad actually sold door-to-door life insurance and then worked for Prudential. And so we didn't have any money. And I thought, I'm gonna have to quit school and go home and live with my mom, and I would do that and I would just figure out life. And she said, that you can't do that. You can't come home. Your dad would be so disappointed. I don't know what you're going to do or how you're gonna do it, but you're gonna have to figure this out. And so I knew some people back in the dorms, and I went back and said, is there any way you could have an opening to be a resident assistant? So I moved back into the dorms. I was an RA, I worked at the front desk, I worked at the hot dog shop, which is actually sort of fun because you knew about all the big parties when people were changing classes, so there was a plus. But I think, that was a time in my life where I was like, I'm gonna go home and work in the mall, and I'll figure out my life from there. And I think my mom pushing me in my dad's honor really helped me learn how resilient I could be. You have no idea what you can be until you're confronted with those things. And really helped me with leadership. In the RA job, to be able to say, I think I could be a pretty good leader. And that sort of led me to think about what I wanted to do ultimately.
And one of the things that, as a journalist, we've been following the economy and how people are struggling right now, and how insurance prices have really gone through the roof. And part of that is driven by climate change, part of that is driven by cars becoming more expensive to repair. But I thought it was so interesting, Tricia, when you shared that your own experiences, having lived on that edge between being able to pay bills and not being able to pay bills, how that influences how you interact with your customers and how much money you think Progressive should actually make on the dollar.
Yeah, we've had a long-standing goal or objective since we were formed in 1937, but we went public in 1971. And we've always said we want to grow as fast as we can and make 4 cents on the dollar. So we're just trying to make 4 cents on the dollar, and we won't grow if we don't think we can service our customers in the way they deserve. And that's really been our objective all along, just to make 4 cents. And to be honest, and there's some insurance people in the room, it's been really tough this last couple of years because you try to keep your rates competitive. It's really easy to shop and switch. And so all of us, as we think about keeping customers, which is sort of the holy grail in insurance, retention, you want to make sure that you're priced right, not too high, not too low. And I think over the years, especially after the pandemic, all of us in this room that were in the industry gave back a bunch of money to insurance. So we gave back, Progressive personally gave back over $1 billion in 2020 because people stopped driving, and then even more in 2022. Well, we found ourselves in 2023 with car prices high, the throughput in the body shops high, which means if your car is going to take longer to get fixed, which is rental car. So think of 1 6-month policy is worth 1 day of rental. So if you go over it, if things are clogged in the system, you're not going to make money. And so we hit 2023 thinking we were in a great position, got our rates in the system. We are state regulated, so it's a really complex business. You have to get approved by every state. And I think I can speak about on behalf of the whole industry. We were sorely wrong, and we had to get out ahead of just making sure that we made enough money for our shareholders, but also trying to do the right thing for our customers, because it wasn't just insurance. It was groceries and gasoline and all the things that all of us have been, thinking about for the last couple of years.
And you take your philosophy on those formative moments for you to how you interact with your customers. And you started off as a claims agent. She was literally climbing underneath cars in body shops. This lovely lady, can you imagine? She actually, even before Progressive, you were donning a hard hat and you're forklift certified.
I am. So if anybody after this needs a tub enclosure moved, I'm your girl.
So having started not in a C-suite or even on an entry ramp to a C-suite position, how do you help lift up other women? And you said something that was really great about 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds who can't even imagine what their life is going to look like.
Well, I think the first thing is you make sure you're available to tell your story. So one of my board members talked to a board member of this organization about a year ago and asked if I would be a part of this. And to me, it's an honor because if you can touch 1 or 2 or 3 people in the room and give them that confidence, like I can do this, because, and we talked about this yesterday, during the first 15 years of my career, I just was sort of trudging along. I was moving up, but I would have never been able to see myself in the C-suite at all. But a couple people gave me that confidence, and I at that point stopped comparing myself to everyone. I think I spent so many years comparing myself, oh, he's more analytical, she's more creative, and I never saw in myself what others saw in me. In fact, my first big job was in CHRO, and I have no HR background. I have a marketing background. I have 6 kids, so I've had a couple maternity leaves, but that's about it.
Just a couple, just 6 kids.
And the job came open. My predecessor was looking externally, which I thought was good because there were 2 things that were missing, I thought, at Progressive at that time. And that was super incredible deep analytics on people. We had 1 turnover number for the whole company, that was it. And we didn't have a really true diversity, equity, and inclusion organization in earnest. So we did little things here and there, but it was really pretty shallow. And I was like, I hope we find somebody. Didn't find anybody, and he opened it up internally. Other people went for it. I didn't go for it because how presumptuous of me to think I can go for the top HR job without any experience. And then people called me, and they were people that I'd worked for, around with, not related to each other, and they would be like, Tricia, you have to go for this job. You love people, you love culture, you love analytics. And I would be like, I know, how embarrassing for me to go up there. Finally, one woman who still works at Progressive called me enough time, and she said, why don't you have a lunch with Glenn? And it was really liberating because I knew I wasn't going to get the job. So going in there and outlining exactly what I thought they should do with Progressive was easy, because you weren't nervous about saying the right thing or leaving and saying, why didn't I say that? I just put it all on the line. And ultimately, he put me in the interview process, and I got that role. And I talk to women about that all the time, because had those advocates not made those phone calls, I wouldn't be here talking to you. So be advocates for other people and create advocates around you that make those phone calls. And take some risks. Worst case, I had lunch with the CEO. And I think I started by saying, try to see in yourself what others see in you. I think that's really difficult, especially with social media. But look at yourself and know your worth, know you're seen, know you're heard, and know your value.
Yeah. I think one of the parts of that is obviously advocating for others, but I also want to seize on something that you said, Tricia, about how destructive it is to compare yourself to others. And I think that we all can find ourselves at times being like, oh, this person's doing better or working harder or progressing more. And I just want to say it to everybody here, you're doing a great job. And I hope that you say that to yourself, and I hope that you say that to others, but I hope you also listen when people tell you you're doing a great job, because I think especially as hard-working women, we are tough on ourselves. And Tricia and I are both moms. I know a lot of you out there are moms as well. And you mentioned taking a couple maternity leaves. Still in our society, maternity leaves can set us back, both in terms of job trajectory, being considered for promotions, for salary raises. Talk to us about how you have managed to be a mom of the very first caliber, and also continue to rise to the very top of your industry.
Yeah, I think it's been a circuitous path. And as you were talking, I remember having a couple maternity leaves, and we had these network lines, and my boss at the time was the president of claims, and I was one of his general managers. And he put a direct line in my house so he could talk to me during my maternity leave, and I thought that was an honor. Like, how effed up is that? I was like, wait, and when you're in it, you're like, oh, I'm so important that I can't, nurse and talk, So I was, and this same person called me on the hospital phone when I was like, like I was in the middle of whatever. That's not an honor. That is, it's crazy. So For me, I could tell a lot of stories. We just don't have enough time. For me, it was like, don't ever make those mistakes. In fact, any person that goes on a vacation, or like whether it's vacation or leave, maternity leave, or any sort of thing, I'm like, you will not call in. In fact, if you take a vacation, our rule is if you go out of the country, you have to get your boss's permission. And a person, a female that worked with me, said, we're going to the Dominican Republic, but I'll be online. And I'm like, well, you have to get your boss's permission to take your computer. And she's like, can I? And I'm like, no. So, because those are the kind of things you think are so important, and we all deserve to take a break. But how I approached motherhood in the balance was really to be able to have a plan like you do in business. So I started talking about how we had this great plan to grow the company this time last year, and then all heck broke loose, inflationary pressures happened, and we had to regroup, which is, we do this, all of you do this every day in business. There's a glitch around the corner that you go, okay, I'll do this, what's plan B, C, D? You have to do that in your personal life. So me, it was, okay, assume that you have something really important, and when Greg and I both traveled a lot, inevitably I would have a big presentation, and you'd walk into somebody's room, and they were touching their ear, and you're like, oh, no, you all know what's going on. And so I had friends that were backup. And I had friends that would say, could you take Addie for 2 hours while I do this presentation? I'll come home, and in the meantime, on the weekend, I'll babysit for you. And I planned all my kids' events around that too. So I would look at the year and say, okay, I want to go to Matthew's Field Day, Emma's Valentine's Day party. Because if you don't make those plans, things fall through the cracks, and it's really hard. And all of us are working people, so you're going to miss plenty of things. We're not going to be at the coffees. We're not going to do a lot of the things that you're able to do when you stay at home. So I was really always planful, and that was really important to me. And I had those conversations with my children all along to make sure I got them what they needed at the time they needed it. Didn't mean I was always there.
I'm going to tease forward. We're going to learn about the time when Tricia almost walked away from it all, but we're going to save that for the end. But it's related. It's related to this. And as you were telling the story about being out of the country and having phone calls, Erica mentioned that I started off my career as Diane Sawyer's anchor producer. And I was in Russia on vacation. It was the first vacation I took out of the country since I started working for her, and got an email saying, let's discuss this tomorrow. And I freaked out. I got on the phone with her assistant and said, I'll start looking at booking flights back. I don't know what time I'll be able to get back into the country. And she's like, she just forgot that you were in Russia. It's okay.
Right.
There is nothing that she wants you
that
to
badly,
do.
yeah.
But we do that to ourselves also. We will do that to ourselves, particularly as women. We can be very guilty of being like, I'm so crucial, and that is an honor, which it is, but that we also have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And this was something that you and I discussed.
Yeah, and I think if you if you do that and then you there's times where I can't sleep. So I'm working, I put those emails in draft, because if you send them, someone's going to say, if she was up at 2 in the morning, it was just because, I was having a hot flash or something. But, but what you want to be able to do is say, put that in draft. Greg and I were taking an empty nester trip. We were so excited about it. We had planned it for years to Southeast Asia to leave March 10th, 2020. Yes. And I was sobbing because I was so excited. We had planned this forever. And I was like, he's from the New Jersey area, and I'm like, New Yorkers are like, they're kind of like on the edge. I think it's a flu. And Greg's like, it's not a flu. We are not going, you can't get stuck in Cambodia. We weren't able to go until 2023. I went to Southeast Asia for 3 weeks, and I turned off my Outlook notifications. I did not check email once.
Let that be an inspiration to all of us. So you mentioned Greg, your husband, and one of the things that was a conversation that you and I had, but is also, I know, a conversation that so many of us have had in trying to manage 2 careers and a household, is who takes the lead? Who gets to move forward? And Greg said something to you when you both you blended your families, you had new children in addition, 6 altogether, and are trying to figure out how do we both work at Progressive at that point and manage to be there for our children. And what did he say to you?
He came home one night, it was for a trip, and he was looking at how many times we had both traveled because we didn't want to overlap the travel. And we had our first going into high school that year, and we had blended our families, so we were going to have a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior in high school, and then 2 little ones. And so he came home one night and said, I've been thinking about it, and we both traveled. He was very high up, he had a really great career. And he said, I think you have more runway. I think you love corporate life more than I do. And I think the inmates could take over the asylum if somebody's not home. And he didn't really say that, but he meant it. I could see his
saw
eyes.
it in the eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And because we had both been divorced, we were nervous about, this is working, we're okay. And he gave up his career for our family. Our children now are great cooks because he's a great cook. They watched him support me. And we never looked back once that happened, and that was many, many years ago. And to have somebody in your life that does that for you, that gives up something and just watches you and lifts you up and is so proud of you, is really special. And you have to surround yourself with people like that, or be that for people that you love.
Find those people. Be that person, too. Well, another thing that you're able to provide, though, as a mother, the lesson that you learned from your mother. When you were describing her, you said something about how she would interact with you when you would walk into a room.
Yeah, she was one of those moms that, she was just funny and wild. Rose Flanagan, this Irish Catholic woman, and she would do these fun things, but she literally, I could walk in to meet her for breakfast somewhere, and you could see in her eyes, what she thought of me, and you get that self-esteem from the first woman in your life. And it really, I could tell, she made me feel like I was the smartest, best person in every, Denny's I walked into. But it made a difference because they did give me that confidence. So my dad had given me some confidence around making sure I balanced my life. And when he died, I was like, I'm gonna honor him and do the right thing. But then my mom, and she said at the very beginning, she didn't even know what a claims rep trainee was. And she said, I'm 22. And she said, you're going to be a CEO someday. And I was like, I don't even know what a CEO is. And so having somebody like that just, she's obviously biased, but that sees that and gives you that confidence is so crucial.
What are the ways in which you feel like, if I could go back and do that differently, this is where I did not earn A's?
It's hard because I don't like to look at regrets because I think I've learned something from every stumble I've made. And there's probably times where, maybe I made the right or wrong trade-off. I remember when I got the HR job, Nick, our youngest, was 2, and he didn't quite understand. And we had a family meeting. I said, before I go for this job, I don't think I'm gonna get it, but before I go, this is gonna require a lot of travel. I'm new in my role. And the family was like, yes, yes, yes. And Nick, the 2-year-old said, are you gonna be home for Christmas? And I'm like, ugh. And so he and I had a lot of conversations as a 2-year-old. You can start those conversations really young. And I said, buddy, I'm gonna be home for all the important things I can. And you and I have to have these conversations as we go forward of, I need you. And he did. There was one time I'd been traveling extensively. I was trying to understand the company and the dynamics of our culture and figuring out ways to nurture it. I came home and he said, can we go for a walk? I'm like, sure. So we're walking and he said, what's the process of changing your name? And I was like, what are you thinking? And he said, I think I'd like to be called Chuck. And I was like, his name's Nick. And I was like, do you have a friend? Yeah, do you have a friend at preschool named Chuck? He's like, no. But I'm like, well, you know what? Chuck Griffith, it has a ring to it. Let's talk about it later. And he said, no, I'd like to be called Chuck Phillips. I was like, who is that? And I said, well, you know what, let's table that, and when you're 18, if you still want to be named Chuck Phillips, we can reopen the conversation. What happened was the next day, he always was the one, you have that son that wants to marry you until it's not healthy. And I was leaving for a trip, and I said, bye, Nikki, I love you. And he said, bye, Mrs. Phillips. So I was like, okay, I'm traveling too much. And that's all I knew. And so I was like, okay, I need to back this up.
Well, for a certain period, you felt like you were giving, or you had to, not even that you felt like, you had to, and you made these decisions to allocate much of your time to your kids, your family, and also to Progressive, and that left very little for you. When did you start to see yourself able to breathe again and give yourself more of what you deserved?
I'd say probably 15 or so years ago, I realized that I was super stressed because of all the things that were happening with different kids at different points in their lives, and not having enough time with my friends. Greg and I would try to do date nights on Friday, but it usually meant cooking at home. And I wasn't working out at all. In fact, I'd kind of given that up. I wasn't reading at all, like the things you give up that give you pleasure. And Greg and I both said, we have to commit to like making sure we're healthy and feel good and can understand that stress. So we started working out together every morning. We I don't say meditate, but at the end we set our intentions for the day of how I want the day to go, and I really think about and kind of unwind the day and make it have a positive impact on people. And I started to be able to read more, be with my friends more, and I think having that part of my life opened up how much I had just focused. And I don't think I would have done any differently, because there's only so many hours in the day, and you've got a big career and children that are really important. And the one thing that happened a couple years ago, I'd gotten this award from St. John's University of Insurance Person of the Year. And we were in New York, and it was a room about this big, and they had done, unbeknownst to me, some videos of my children, my siblings, my spouse, and they showed it at the end. And my daughter Emma said something that I was like, I think I did something right. She said, I don't know how she did it, but she was always there. And I wasn't, but I was there enough to where, for the important things that they needed, because I was always trying to listen.
And that brings us, I think, to the story that I teased forward to. And I thought that this was the most interesting moment that you shared with me, when Tricia was willing to walk away from it all. You were on the cusp of potentially becoming the first female CEO, only the fourth leader of Progressive in its entire history, and you were in a finalist interview. Share what happened.
Yeah, so the interview for CEO goes over several years, and I had been interviewing for approximately 3 years, meeting with all the board members, presenting. It was really stressful. I won't do that to the next person, because 3 years seems like a lot. And so I was going through all these processes. It was constant. At some point I was like, I don't even care if I get the job. I can't interview anymore. I've got to actually work. And so I had my last interview. So go back. Jack, our son, is in his senior year of high school. At the beginning of every year, I'm like, let's figure out the year, what's important. He loves football. He still works in football. And he said, just 10 football games. That's all I need. If you're at the 50-yard line at 10 games, that's all I need from you. I'm like, can do. So I scheduled everything and made sure that I could be at every single one of his games. What I didn't plan was that they would continue to win. And so they hadn't had that good of a track record. I mean, so the 11th game, I could scramble. 12th, 13th. The 14th game was the day after Thanksgiving. Our whole family was in town. We go down. They win. They're going to their first ever in 60 years state championship. We are over the moon, so excited. He is so excited, and he found out when it was. He was like, looking, when is Division III going to play? It's going to play at 7 o'clock on December 3rd, 2015. My interview in Cleveland was at 5 o'clock. My final interview, it was at 5 o'clock, to present to the board exactly how I was going to take the company to the next growth and profitability. They overlapped. And I went into my bathroom, and when you're like a little kid and you like watch yourself cry in the mirror? But I was really old. And I like started crying, and then I was like, what am I doing? I don't need to be the CEO, but I have to go to this game. So I texted my boss, and I said,
let's let that sink in for just a moment, because I heard audible reactions to that you, crying in your bathroom, said, oh, wait a second. I know where my priorities are.
It was a moment where I was like, what am I going to do? And I kind of played it in my head, like, I got to go to this interview. I mean, I've prepared. I have a great story to tell. And then I was just like, I was like, what are you thinking, Tricia? and texted my boss and said, I'm so honored and privileged. This last 3 years have been amazing, but I'm gonna have to withdraw. And he said, let's think about it. And I think the funny part, and this is probably pretty telling about Progressive's culture, the board, all these bigwigs, they came in early. I also thought the board would think, is she really in this if she has to go to a football game, And my point was, if they didn't think that, that was fine. They came in early. I was going against one other person in my company, and he gave me his early time slot. And then I was able to do the interview and turn around and drive to Columbus for the final game, and they won.
So, of course, nosy journalist that I am, I had to ask, who was that man, and what did he regret it?
No, he works for me. And he's great. He's great. We had that conversation. It's really hard because he works really hard as well, and he's really brilliant. And I said, I want you as my partner, and now let's grow this company, and let's just do this. And we haven't been stoppable. The last 8 years have been fantastic with him by my side.
And it goes to that point about teams and allies and not thinking that we can do all of it by ourselves. I think that we are in this moment right now, Tricia, and I think, I imagine all of you feel it too, where it feels like we are pitted against one another, that we are angrier and more defensive, and as you just shared with that story, we all do better when we are collaborative, when we lift each other up, when we work as a team. What advice do you have for all of us here in this room who are trying to navigate our own paths, trying to excel? Motherhood, maybe it's not necessarily, it doesn't need to be your top priority, though it was Trisha's in that moment. But I hope for everybody that you understand what your top priorities are. So, as we try and figure that out, what's your advice to us?
I think within your own companies, you can help control the fact that we should have differing opinions, and that we should, and it's okay and actually really appropriate to disagree, but you don't have to be disagreeable. And when we talk at Progressive about having really big debates around anything, it could be things happening on the outside or things happening on the inside, we always say, assume positive intent. I think we're so easy to go, oh, and then she did this, whether it's business or politics or whatever it is. And I think if you assume positive intent, we can do a better job of getting ourselves in the shoes of others at the appropriate times. And I think if you do that and you have that muscle and you exercise that muscle, it works. Had I not had, I've been working on diversity, equity, inclusion for 20-some years. I formed the first 2 employee resource groups when I was in HR, Progressive African American Network and LGBTQ+, and now we have 9. But when George Floyd was murdered, if I didn't have my PAN, my Progressive African American Network, to lean on and say, okay, here's how I'm going to communicate this. Does this resonate? Do you feel heard? Do you feel safe? Those things are really important. If you don't have that built into your culture, you can't have those conversations because they'd be like, why is Tricia coming? She's never even mentioned this before. But they knew it was in my heart. And as I see some CEOs pulling back on diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think it couldn't have been in your heart in the first place, because it's not something you just do overnight because of an event. It's something that you do to build a culture that at the end, and I end my letters with this, if you ever read my annual letters or my quarterly letters, stay well and be kind to others. And that's how I end every letter, and it's a business letter, but I think it's really important.
Love that. And as she shared the words that she ends her newsletter with, I think we'll end this conversation with those words resonating. We wanted to set aside a little bit of time to actually hear from you and your questions as promised. So there is a microphone there and a microphone there. if anybody wants to move to a microphone, introduce yourself and share your question for Tricia, or if you have a question for me, I'd be happy to answer it as well.
Hi, I am not shy. DEI is really important, and I like how our country has gone there, but it seems that there's a certain group of people who are trying to stop that progress, and it really hurts my heart that they're doing that. What do you think we can do individually to help encourage diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, I think you make it a business imperative like any other business imperative. So when I talked about our 96 combined ratio, our goal of making 4 cents of underwriting profit, I talk about that all the time because it's really important. And if we aren't making that, we need to slow growth to get that profit. We know that that's one of our core values. And I think if you understand and talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just as the right thing to do, but as a business imperative to be able to reflect the customers you serve, the people you lead, and then it goes full circle from the employees to your communities to your customers, then the shareholders win. And if you show that and prove that nice virtuous cycle, then people understand what an imperative it is, just like other business imperatives.
Good afternoon. Tricia, you are profound. You're incredible.
Thank you.
Someone at my table said you are also so likable. I want to have coffee with you, hang out. I also love your dress. It's beautiful. I walked in today. I'm a mom. I have a 2, 4, and 6-year-old, chief operating officer of my company. There's a lot to juggle. It's hard to find balance. I feel guilt. It's hard to make decisions when it relates to company responsibilities versus family versus friends. You've inspired me. People say it's hard to be what you can't see, but thank you for showing us an example of what we all can be.
Thank you.
You've also, I said this already, I'm sorry, you've inspired us. So what inspires you? I'm so interested. What's inspired you as you've made so many strides in your career?
You know, I think, well, let me go back to your first comment because I think that's really important because I think all of us have felt that guilt feeling. And, you know, if I could give a piece of advice to my younger mom and to all of you is to, you know, what I didn't always do well at the beginning was I wasn't always present. So when I was at home, I was thinking about work and work thinking about home, and I was sort of mediocre, and everybody knew it. You know, you kind of knew that. And so really being present and focusing being successful where I was, I think was really critical. I also think that all of us have to give ourselves some grace. Like you're gonna have not great days as a worker, not great days as a mom, as a parent, and sometimes go easy on yourself. And I remember thinking, and we were talking about this yesterday, I always wanted to be this perfect mom with, you know, we had a lot of sit-down dinners, but the perfect meal. Sometimes cereal is actually just okay, you know? And in fact, my kids were like, yes, you know? So, I mean, give yourself some grace about, and you know what kids appreciate when you're like, I wasn't my best today. I'm sorry I yelled at you. I mean, kids, you're not perfect, and they learn from that how to make mistakes and admit mistakes. I get inspired by rooms like this of women and people and men coming together and supporting each other. Because when you don't feel like you're alone and you can share your stories and share your insecurities and tell stories and share stories, the more and more stories we can talk about lifting each other up and being the person that other people can say, I can do that too, there's power in that. So we should use our positions as senior leaders to continue to do that. Every day, make it your mission to, when you lay your head on your pillow, did I touch the lives, whether it's in your work, your neighborhood, organizations you're with, to have a positive effect on someone. And at the end of the night, if you lay your head and you've done that a couple times, great. If not, double down the next day and make that your priority.
I love the idea of sharing your insecurities. Can you share your insecurities with us?
Can you guys stay for another hour, or are we good? We good? Okay. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm on Instagram, but I don't have any, I'm not on with any progressive people, or just mostly my kids and their friends. Occasionally I'll follow something, and I try to admit that I'm comfortable in my own skin. How the hell does J-Lo still look how good she looks? I'm not comfortable in my own skin. I'm constantly going, I mean, it's getting better, but I'm going to be 60 this year. Do not let it take 60 years, I'm telling you people. So I'm constantly looking at, you know, you look at people who, you look at your wrinkles, you look at all those things. So insecure about every person in the world is. I was always insecure about Illinois State is a very, very esteemed university. You're supposed to laugh because it's really not, but all the guy I talked about had gone to Chicago. I have a guy that works for me that went to Yale and Harvard. I mean, all these schools, and I felt so intimidated versus saying, what did I do? I pulled myself up from a really bad situation and graduated and did really well. And then you sometimes step back and then you're like, okay, but you have to tell yourselves that story and talk to yourselves about that. Talk to yourself, because you can let that go. And I've used this quote as what I try to live by every day, but I don't always do it. And it's Teddy Roosevelt's, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that's really important, and I work on that every day.
Thank you for that question. I'll go back over to this side.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline, and my question is for if you could go back and tell yourself when you were 20 or early 30s, like the best piece of advice to get you to where you are now, what would that be?
Absolutely focus on the qualities that make you great now. You always want to work on your opportunities, but I knew that I've always been known as an authentic leader, someone who's genuine and someone who's approachable. Always do that, but I also build great teams, and that allows you to go somewhere and know that the company's going to be taken care of because you've got this great team. And I think once I kind of put my arms around the things that really made me me, which were really great, I moved forward and continued to make those better. But I think I was always looking at the other things I didn't do well. Look at the things you do really well and continue to hone in on those, and you'll be great.
I also love the women, by the way. In my eye line, I see Elevance Health and McDonald's Corporation. They're just nodding heads and like the smiles and encouragement. I hope everybody is feeling the fuel from one another in this room. Let's head back over here.
Hi, thank you. My name's Michelle, and your story about where you and your husband had to make the decision, okay, whose turn is it, really resonates. That's something me and my husband have kind of taken turns throughout our career journeys, and the decision was always what's best for our family unit, not just for ourselves individually. But I'm curious how you really came to terms with what sounds like him giving up potentially a pretty lucrative career and not letting that stop you or make you feel guilty, because I very similarly can relate to a spouse that says, but it's your turn, and being grateful for that, but also knowing that, you know, you care for that person and you want them to be fulfilled too. So I'd love to just hear how you kept going, knowing that that was a choice your family made.
Yeah, I think I was very cognizant of what he was doing, and I knew that I didn't want it to affect his ego. And so he had some things, like I said, he went to cooking school and got really great at that. He had a couple different, like he bought some rental properties for a while. He did some things that he dabbled in that were fine, that kind of took some time until he got used to saying, hey, I'm running a family of 6, and it's really big and it's really important. And he saw the fruits of what he was doing and the success of the children. I think it takes you a while to get there. And then I think he was good. And I also it was really important that if I came home from a trip on a Friday night, I wouldn't go out with friends. I really did focus on our relationship, because it was important for me to be appreciative of him, but also know that when you're the one at home, you know, by the time somebody gets home Friday night, they really need you and they need an adult. And I was very cognizant of that. And he and I we have a really great partnership. We've been married over 30 years, and we talk all the time. We don't have, like, if someone's upset, we just say it. And we learned it way back then, because it was like, we don't have time to do this. Let's just make sure we're always good. Because if we're good, the rest of the family's good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to check in with our host because the countdown clock is getting too close to 0, and we still have 4 people at the microphones. Do we have enough time to go through all of them? All right. So don't bother standing up if you haven't already, but we'll try and get all these final questions. Yes.
Hi, my name is LaToya Antonio. I'm a consultant at Spencer Stewart. And my question is around mentorship. So you talked about your first role as CHRO and how somebody kind of advocated for you to be in the room. And so obviously you're in a position now where you can send the elevator down to other women. But for those who are on the ground floor looking to get up, how do we identify those mentors and get into a position where people will raise the flag and be a voice in the room for us?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And for me, I seek out women a lot, and I've built programs within Progressive. So we have, because if you build programs, people can identify, and then you can figure out what their skills are. So we have a first rung program where you're trying to get into leadership, and we'll help you with those skills. And I will meet with every one of those people for a half an hour during this session. We have a multicultural leadership development program where we have a diverse group of people that get to work their job, but also solve take an 18-month time frame to solve a business problem, and they always get promoted after that. What I would do is, if you're looking for a mentor, look for something that you're really trying to work on. Make sure that it's not this long-term process, because what I have found is sometimes it's hard to break up, and you only have so much time with mentees. And sometimes mentees would come to me and say, "I'd love to have you as a mentor." I'd be like, "What are you looking for?" It's the job of the mentee to say, "Here's the couple things I need help with. Here's what I'm struggling with," and come and do the pre-work, and then you're going to learn so much more from the mentor. And that's what I would do. I would look at somebody and say, "I admire her. I would love to do a job she's doing or he's doing," and then come up and say, "Hey, could I be with you for 3 times over the next 3 quarters and just have a bunch of questions," and kind of start with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Trisha.
Hi.
Acknowledge you. Oh, there we go. Really want to acknowledge you for leading with vulnerability and having the courage to be so open about your personal life and your journey with 1,500 strangers.
Thank you.
It really is impactful. My question is about prioritization. It feels like every single day there's 100 things that could get done. There seems like just as many opportunities in the business that could be focused on for impact. How do you as a leader prioritize your time for impact, and how do you think about prioritization at Progressive?
Thank you, and it's a great question. I don't always do it successfully, but I think I've gotten a good balance over the last 10 years or so. And my first priority from how I spend my time is being with the people of Progressive. So we have 65,000 people. I know if I can motivate them, they're going to do their job well, and so and so. So I'm leaving tomorrow through Friday to go to a bunch of claims offices in Florida, Georgia, Minnesota, and just do town halls and kind of let them know where I'm taking the company. In the meantime, I'm doing the work back home to kind of figure out the construct of where we're going to profitably grow. For me, to get out there, I do videos. I do this every month. I do Trisha in 2. And people submit a personal question and a business question. I do it in 2 minutes. So I try to get a lot of communication out. During COVID, I did At Home with Trisha. And I would sit in my library, and my son Nick, who was in film school at the time, would videotape me, and I could talk about current events. So I think it's really big to communicate. And then, of course, I have a great team, and we think about strategy all the time, but we do sessions of, okay, what exactly can we accomplish in what given time, and what are things that are just going to have to go to the end? Because you're always going to have 100 great things. You really can only work on maybe 3 to 5 big things, and don't try to boil the ocean. And we do that, and I've noticed, I do that on a 3-year time frame. When we've done that, we are uber successful because of that surgical focus. And the other stuff will either go away, or if it keeps rising up, it ends up making that top 3.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Hello. Thank you for your time today. On the topic of diversity and inclusion, the term D&I has become a buzzword for just corporate America. It's the baseline foundation, and as a woman of color, someone whose identity is very visible, you quickly realize that you become to the cover of the brochure until it gets tough, and then companies step away. So As a leader, how do you make sure you're a true advocate of diversity and inclusion and of just people of color, especially when it is tough and when no one else in the room supports you?
Yeah, I think having, whether it's called ESG or DE&I, has become super political, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So I think what you need to do is set a culture where call it whatever you want. It's about doing the right thing, and I said, reflecting the customers we serve and the people we lead, and if you do that, it's an imperative and you get the results. So I think it's about also wanting to have and being open to having other opinions and seeing the view through someone else's world. And so I think, and it's about also making sure you hit every demographic. So as an example, Gail Boudreau, years ago, we're on the business council together. She had Kevin Love come talk about mental health in terms of how it is with a man. He's a basketball player. And I'm having him come to Progressive. I also focus on men's health, men's mental health. So I think you have the whole spectrum of making sure you're hitting things that are important to people without getting political. So, whether you use the acronyms DE&I, you need to make sure you have events and things that make people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And that goes through every demographic. And so I talked about George Floyd, but I was as vocal when the Asian American women got murdered in Atlanta, when Orlando had the LGBTQ murders. So you talk about a lot of things, not about taking a political stance. What I say to people at Progressive is vote, because last election was 50-50, so vote, and also I want people to feel like they belong at Progressive, and if they do that, you can be the best version of yourself. And that's my whole goal for the 65,000 people at Progressive.
Thank you.
All right, last question. So lots of pressure on you to make it very interesting. No.
Great.
Please.
Hi, I'm Guadalupe Gomez, investment consultant with Fiducian Advisors. Trisha, I personally love that you're touching on motherhood so much. So my mother gave up her career to stay at home with us and raise us. I'm in my early 30s, getting ready to be married, and I would hope to be a working mother one day. What are some of the best parts of being a working mother? Because I hear a lot about the hard stuff.
I think when you go to events, you are truly present there because you're going to a soccer game, a football game, whatever, and you're not necessarily sitting over there talking to other people. You are you're watching your child. I really made sure that was my mission, to be there for them. Like I said, Jack would look at me on the 50-yard line. He was always like, so I knew he saw me, and so I think that was really special. I think making sure the time we had together, so our dinners together, we didn't, there were no phones. It was basically, we would start off the dinner. What's the best part of your day? Anything you'd want to do differently? We had these great discussions. So I think really being involved in my children's lives, because I knew there was times where I had to be away, and it was Greg's total responsibility. I think you'll find that the children, and now they're all adults, they're all out of college, really appreciated it, and now I'm probably more involved in their lives and giving advice than I ever was, especially as they become parents. And I think it's a really great balance, and I think kids appreciate it, whatever you end up doing. They see it and they realize, hey, I've got options. Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like Guadalupe rose to the challenge and gave us a very nice final question. The Chicago Network is all about empowering women to lead. And I think that you have empowered all of us here today, Trisha. You've inspired us. You have been vulnerable with us. You've spoken about your insecurities. You've spoken about mental health, which we sort of touched on briefly, but that's something that, especially as we give more voice to the things inside us that we have been trying to push down, I think helps to elevate all of us. So I just want to say thank you to all of you women who have joined us, the few men who are also here in allyship, to our hosts at the Chicago Network, and especially to Trisha. All right, shall we?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for Trisha and Lana. Didn't that feel like a master class? So many nuggets I want to tuck away. Thank you so much for coming out today. We do want to mention a fun fact, and it has to do with something that someone might be able to take home today. There are beautiful floral arrangements on the tables. 105 years ago today, Congress passed the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. Yeah. So, the guest whose birthday is closest to August 18th, the date that the 19th Amendment was ratified, if you're following your history there, the flowers are yours. All right. With that, I want to say have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much for coming, and we will see you next year for the 37th Annual Women in the Forefront Luncheon. Have a great day.